Hey everyone, welcome back to the Promised Land podcast with me, Scott Saunders, talking all things Manchester United. There's a few things to talk about the morning after Lyon and Manchester United have played out a 2-2 draw in the Europa League quarterfinals. Generally, I think that there are signs of progress here. United need the summer transfer window. That is absolutely obvious. But what Ruben Amorim is doing, his messages are getting across, and you've got a much more structured football team who have their limitations. And I'll be talking about those limitations over the course of this podcast. But I think the first thing to say is that you can look at what Ruben Amorim is trying to do and see what he is achieving. It's not too much to shout about at the moment, but in that performance last night, I think United put in as a collective a strong showing and probably deserved to win the game, especially after Joshua Zirkzee scored after a fantastic Bruno Fernandes assist, fantastic cross from him. In the 86th, 87th minute, you thought, well, I thought at the time, hey, United might do it tonight, not remembering the fact that United always tend to concede so many late goals and have that habit of making massive individual errors to end up costing them points and matches, especially in Europe. It happened a lot last season as well. And I'll get to that at some point in this podcast. But United are giving a good account of themselves at the moment. I think a lot of the players understand what the job is. And I think I'm saying things that we all know here, but I think they're being let down by maybe the wrong fits in the system. And it's a shame that the draw came about last night. But I think the important thing to take away from this is when cooler heads prevail, is that United are in a good position in this tie, and it could have been a better position, but they're going back to Old Trafford, and you would hope and expect really that United can beat Lyon, because Lyon are looking at the way that they played last night. I don't think they're really too much to fear. I think this United team have enough in the locker. Even this United team have enough in the locker to be able to put them away at Old Trafford. But you know what I'm going to say, and I'll say it at some point in this podcast. You can subscribe to it on Apple and Spotify. Give a 5-star review as well if you've not done so already. Follow me on social media as well at _Scott Saunders on X, Instagram, and TikTok. And get in touch on YouTube. Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel as well, the Promised Land Manchester United podcast. And we're talking all things United. And over the course of the end of the season and through the summer as well, I'll be doing hopefully a hell of a lot more. Talking about United and their rebuild as it happens, because it does need to happen. But look, I think the first thing to say before I get into the negative side of things here, because it does need to be talked about, and I'm glad that I waited till this morning to be able to do that, because this podcast is meant to be balanced, and I do pride myself on it being balanced. And you get frustrated. I mean, you do get frustrated. I did get a little bit frustrated last night. Maybe if you saw the way that my sarcastic tone was on social media, or like maybe a little bit more scathing than I usually am, because look, I think I watch these United matches and I know how little there is to play for in the league at the moment, but all of the importance, because of the underperformance in the other competitions, all of the importance has been absolutely positively squared on the Europa League. And United are shooting themselves in the foot. And it's just really, really frustrating to see that this is happening. But generally, look, I think that what I'll do first in this podcast, I'll talk about the positives, and I'll talk about some of the problems that are holding them back in the second half of the show after the break. But Lenny Yoro gets his first goal. I think Lenny Yoro has been, after a shaky start, you remember that game against Southampton that he had, and he got torn up by Sulemana. It was a difficult first few months for him with the injury that he had, but I think the way that he is growing in this team, you see the player that United thought they were getting. You see the talent that Real Madrid wanted to sign. You see that he's starting to find a place in this team. You see that he's starting to understand the system. He's pretty dependable, touch wood. And for an 18, 19-year-old player, I think he's already looking like a hell of a find. wasn't too difficult to find, obviously, because I think a lot of people knew about how good he was before he signed. But he is he is the type of player that United need to be building with in their team. And I think Yoro has found his position on one of the two flanks at centre back. Does all the good things. Defensively solid. The way he brings the ball out. There was one moment where he carried the ball forward to the point where he had a shot on goal. I think he was a little bit surprised that he managed to carry the ball that far forward and the shot went wide. But he is a really, really strong player. And the in an ideal scenario, an ideal world, United are going and plucking talents of Lenny Yoro's age and profile and talent level, from all different parts of Europe, all different parts of the world, and all different positions, and formulating them into this team, which we hope that United can go and build to start competing for titles again. But there's a long way to go in that sense. Lenny Yoro, I think the way that the instant reaction to Mamadou Ugarte's shot was really, really positive. And I think he deserves the good moment that he's had. I think Lenny Yoro is really starting to show himself as he's starting to live with the pressure and the expectation of playing for Manchester United. He's doing all the right things. And I think that in a challenging first season for him and the football club, I think he's really starting to come out as one of the most positive signs to take forward. So he was signed last summer, and I think that as much criticism as maybe the transfer strategy has got over the last few years, I hope they're onto the right path with some of the signings that they made last year. I think Mazraoui as well was. I think there was one moment where he was torn up, and I can't remember who had a shot. One of the opponents had a shot, and he got dribble past. But generally, I think I look at Mazraoui, and wherever he is, whether he's on the ball in his own half, on the ball in his own box, on the ball in the final third, on the ball in the middle third, and trying to bring the ball forward, you look at him and you talking about dependable. You think you know what you're going to get from him, and it's always going to be good in a defensive sense as well. Tracks back really well. Defends one-on-ones really well. There was a really good incident or a really good situation that he came out on top of in that game last night as well, where he was basically the only man back and dealt with it incredibly. He is, look, in terms of a squad player moving forward, will he start every single week when this rebuild is done? I don't know, but he can cover a multitude of positions, both sides at centre-back, both wing-back positions. And for now, he is a really, really strong option to have in that team. And for 12 million quid, he is the type of player that United should be filling their team with. That's two players there that I've mentioned that United should be looking at to replicate in terms of the quality, the mentality that they have, the consistency that they show. Very, very good. Bruno Fernandes as well with a fantastic assist. And generally, I think I look at Bruno sometimes and I think, I feel for you, man. I really do feel for you, because there are so many good situations that United get into, or so many good situations that United can have or can progress into, where Bruno is essentially let down by other people. And like I said, I don't want this to be this is not going to be like calling out individuals, hopefully anyway, because that's not what this podcast is intended to be. But you do have to look at things, and the way I look at it is how do United get back to where they need themselves to get to? We all know that it's because of personnel. We all know that personnel need to change. And I think the system is now getting to a point where Ruben Amorim is doing essentially as much as he can, and is showing that he's tweaked his system as well. He's tweaked it. Like, it's not as adventurous as he'd like it to be. Absolutely. It's not as energetic as he'd like it to be, obviously, but he's having to make concessions for the players that he's got just in order to get short-term results. And I think he's not going against his principles too much, but he just knows the limitations of the players that he's got, and he's finding ways to cover up those limitations and to get the best out of them in the system that he wants to play. So I'm looking at the likes of Casemiro in that situation. But Bruno Fernandes, I tailed off a little bit there. Bruno Fernandes is, no matter where he seems to play, always seeming to deliver, and that assist for the goal, Joshua Xerxes' goal was absolutely fantastic, and he, I think there was a moment at the end where he looked pretty miffed that United had not managed to hold on to the win, because I think they deserved, to be honest, Lyon had their chances, but they deserved to win as well. And I think at the time that the goal came from Joshua Xerxes, it was deserved. I think it was deserved because of the way that United applied themselves. Lyon didn't really threaten all that much. I know they had a few chances and a few shots, but it always seemed like United were the more dangerous team. Even this version of Manchester United seemed like the more dangerous team on the night. But they will go back to Old Trafford and they will attempt to. All they have to do is win, you know? All they have to do is win. And when you're Manchester United and you're used to them going to Old Trafford and playing against a team like Lyon, you would think, all right, it's pretty much not in the bag, but if the players do their job properly, the job should get done. And I don't come out of that game last night thinking that automatically that I'm confident that United will win, even though that they've played well, even though things seem to be looking more positive on the pitch. I just don't have that absolute confidence at the moment that they will go and make sure that they progress in this tie. Tottenham in a difficult situation. Rangers as well going to Athletic Bilbao. It looks like at the moment Athletic Bilbao are in a similar situation to United, and I'd expect Athletic Bilbao to progress. So if United do get through, there'll be another difficult game in the following round against I don't want to make presumptions, but United will just have to take each stage as it comes, and this game next week is an opportunity to fully concentrate on getting the job done on the night. The Old Trafford crowd, I'm sure, will be behind them, but we know I can get on European nights. We know I can get on certain nights if things aren't going well with the atmosphere, with the difficulty that United have had over the last few years. It can get a little bit frustrating and concerning, and obviously that atmosphere can, if things go wrong early on, can turn. But in the last one, some positives anyway. I think United fell to an early penalty it's a similar situation to this one, but Real Sociedad came to Old Trafford and scored a penalty within the first few minutes, and United turned it around 1-4-1. So fingers crossed, United can progress and make sure that they get into the Europa League semi-finals and progress on beyond that, because this competition is so absolutely important for United to enhance or quicken their rebuild. And yet again, this game last night was another night which proved how urgently United need to address a number of positions in the team, and need to address a number of players and a number of positions in this team. And I'll be talking about all of that after the break. I'm sure you can probably tell what I'm going to say, but we'll get into it in a second. So I said that I'm not entirely sure whether United can go and not turn this tie around, because they're obviously level in the tie at the moment, but there is pressure on them now next week to go and win this game. And you should think and expect and hope really that United are able to do this job, but you just can't say it with any certainty at the moment, just because of the volume of errors that are in this team. And that's we know the midfield is a problem. We know the midfield needs to be sorted out. We know that United are probably going to need different centre backs, but I think those two areas at the moment, as much as I've said midfield is a massive priority, and it still is, and United should sign one or two of them in the summer to start transforming their team. It's both ends of the pitch. It's both ends of the pitch which are the most urgent issues to address. And when Ruben Amorim came in, and I saw that Rasmus Højlund was in the team, and I thought, this is a great opportunity for Rasmus Højlund to be able to learn a new system. It's a similar system to the one that he played in at Atalanta, and it's a team which he could hopefully adapt to, get on the end of chances for, and really kick on its game after a bit of a struggling period. So Hoyland, look, I think where I'm getting with this is United don't have quality, and I'm not saying anything particularly new here. They don't have the necessary quality in attack or in goal, and those two problems came to head last night. It was unfortunately Andre Onana and the mistakes that he made, which cost United the result in the end, and I'll talk about him in a second. But just going through the match, there are so many. I said the other week that it's like when look, I don't want to pick on individuals here, but unfortunately, we're living in this world now where each member of this squad is under the microscope and is their future's at risk. You know, every single player in this squad, even Kobe Mainu, and according to reports, their future is at risk, and we don't want to see. I named Kobe Mainu there specifically because he's the one player that, above everyone else, United fans don't want to sell. That's why I mentioned him there. But the point I'm trying to make is every single player is under the microscope. Every single player has a value attached to them. How much value United get out of them if they sell them is up to United. But the microscope on this club is massive, and they've had a few weeks where it doesn't. Like, every game matters, but the importance on these games in the Premier League have dwindled because United have nothing to really play for, and the focus has been on this game in the Europa League and the Europa League run in general. And this was the night to deliver, especially when this quote came out to start with before the game. I'll talk about Onana first. When this quote that Onana said a few days ago of "We're much better than Lyon," I thought it was a fake quote, and I didn't really give any attention to it until Nemanja Matic said what he said. Statistically, the worst goalkeeper in Man United's history. If you're Schmeichel or if you're De Gea, and you say this, maybe I'll have to reflect a little bit, but not from this guy. And then Onana barbs back on social media and says, "At least I've won trophies with the best team in the world. At least I've won titles with the best team in the world." And I thought, okay, right. I can get on board with this. I think football it's had that extra edge stripped away from it over the last few years, and I'm very much for beef like this. I like it. I think it has its place as long as it's done, not with a personal edge or anything like that. Then it's strictly about football itself, which I think this was. And as much as it caught me by surprise that Nemanja Matic said what he said, as it did with everybody, because I think it was overly harsh compared to what Onana had said. But Onana's the one that stoked the fire in the first place. So if you're gonna say things like this, make sure you can back it up. And I said before the game in a social post, I said, I'm sure for all the great chat, I'm all for great chat, but I'm sure if you can ensure you back it up. But with Onana, I'm not sure. And it had to happen, didn't it? It just had to happen. The first goal that he conceded is absolutely shocking. Absolutely shocking. It puts United, and this is the problem that United are fighting against, and why I don't have confidence going into next week. Because you just never know when something like this is going to happen. You just never know. The first goal that he conceded was just completely mistimed. There were players running across. I'm sure we've had this conversation before about goals that Onana's conceded as well. It's a generally common thing for goalkeepers to concede from balls which are floated in and bounced into the far post when players are running across the other side of it. They can be difficult. They can be confusing. But he just flapped at it and completely missed the ball. And it's like, man, how many times do United have to dig themselves out of holes because of errors? The cost is so high, so high. And when it's on a game, as important as this one, in terms of United's future, in terms of United's season in general, the only thing that can, it's not even going to save the season, but the only thing that can claw back some respect from the disaster that this season has been is by winning the Europa League. And how are you going to win the Europa League? You can put in a solid performance as a team, like United did last night. You can put in solid performances. A lot of people can do the right things. You can make your chances. United probably should have taken more chances than they had, but they took two in the end, and they did enough for me to go and win the game. And yet, you find yourself in the difficult position of conceding goals which are completely avoidable. Completely avoidable. And then it changes the dynamic completely. Ruben Amorim talks about conceding the first goal and the difficulties of it so often. I wish I pulled up the stat of how many times United have fallen behind. I don't have it to hand. But you know it's a lot. And invariably, it's somebody's mistake. But after you give it the big one, you just have to make sure that you don't make errors like that. Comedy. It summarizes the era that United are in. And there's conversation now about two conversations. Maybe I'll do the second goal as well here before I get into that. I think people are saying that the second isn't Onana's fault, really. And I think it is a little bit more unfair to say that it's on him. Like he should have held it. And the ball was fizzed at him from the penalty spot, and it was a bit difficult to get a hold of. But at the end of the day, if you're a goalkeeper of that level and expectation level, Paul Scholes said after the game, soft hands, just take it in. But no, it bounces out, gives another opponent a chance. And Ryan Cherky, the guy that me and Quentin spoke about in the preview to the game the other day, turns up and dinks it over Onana. I don't think it could have gone either way. Like 2-1, 2-2, I suppose. If it had gone, it's a fair result, I guess, overall, even though I thought United deserved to win and did enough to do it. But the question mark on Onana now has really come into focus. And I think I've seen people have been saying, I don't think goalkeeper is the urgent fix that we need to make. I think this one can wait because of all the difficulties we have in other positions, like at centre forward, like at number 10, like at wing back, like in midfield. All of those positions were put above the importance of replacing the goalkeeper. It's, for me, and I've said it on the podcast for a few weeks now, the importance of getting a new goalkeeper for next season is absolutely massive. Absolutely massive, because you can plan, you can execute all you want. If you have a goalkeeper that is making errors so consistently, you're going to be let down. And United cannot afford to take that chance. Think of how much easier that game last night would have been if United hadn't have fallen behind because the goalkeeper made a mistake. Takes the pressure out of the situation. It allows United to keep building. And look, Onana's not the only player who makes mistakes. Onana's not the only player who... I don't want to put all entire focus on him, but I'm just looking at this as... These guys are individuals who are fighting for their futures, and you cannot go making mistakes like that when such a massive rebuild is on the horizon in the summer. And two things. I'm seeing people suggest... I just have to get this one out of the way. Why do we let De Gea go and replace him with Onana? David De Gea was let go because if you remember a few years ago, there's two reasons probably, but mistakes from the goalkeeper were frequent. Remember that game in Seville where he came out? I think it was, I can't remember which competition it was, but United lost 3-0 on the night and David De Gea had come way out of his goal. And that was just one of the mistakes that I'm remembering now off the top of my head. But the mistakes were much more frequent from David De Gea at the time. And the wage was a big problem as well. Like, if Ineos are looking at this team now and David De Gea was in the same situation, David De Gea would be out, because he was on 350,000 pounds a week. And the wage needed to be trimmed off. It just did, or it needed to be renegotiated. It needed to come down. And he's at Fiorentina now, and fair play to him. He's doing really well from what I see. The problem that United had, for me, I still maintain to this day now that if there was no way to get David De Gea's wage down, it was the right option to let him go. It was. The problem that United made was signing the wrong goalkeeper to replace him. And we've seen essentially none of the benefits that we thought we were getting with Andre Onana coming in, and all of the errors and all of the negatives. And it's so Manchester United of the moment for the goalkeeper to come out with such fighting talk against a former United player, get called what he got called, and then make 2 errors off the back of it just to absolutely double down on. It's just not a good look, is it? Just not a good look. But I think the point I'm trying to make here is United need absolutely to address this position in the summer. There are some people who think that he should be dropped straight away. Whether we see that, I don't know. But it's certainly not the first time that Onana's made mistakes, and it's certainly not the first time that Onana has cost United points. So you just think back to that Champions League campaign last year and how many errors were being made, and United went out of the group stage. Terrible. Should he be replaced, and should Bayern come back in? I mean, personally, I know Bayern played well in the cup against Arsenal and had a brilliant performance in the penalty shootout. I'm not entirely convinced by him either. I will say that, and I think he will leave in the summer as well. So, like I'm saying here, I don't necessarily get the same vibe. The guy conceded from a corner at Tottenham, if I remember rightly. So some people are in the camp now, they've completely had it and they want to see a change. Mistakes shouldn't be tolerated at the same time. So maybe I'm not entirely sure how I feel on that at the moment. But if you make that statement, if your goalkeeper is dropped at this point in the season for league games against Newcastle and the return leg against Lyon, that is it. United lose their leverage in that position. They've made their statement there that Onana's not good enough to start. And whether it's just taking him out, you can't take him out of the firing line at this point and say it's for the good of his own career, taking him out of the firing line. He'll come back in when the time's right, because this is the time of the season where you need to perform. For me, I've made it clear many times that Onana has to be, an alternative has to be sought, a permanent one has to be sought in the summer. I think the goalkeeping position is massive to get right. Massive, massive, massive. And I said this as well. You don't need to necessarily go and buy a player for 60 million quid or 30 million quid or 40 million quid who is this young 23-year-old, 22-year-old goalkeeper who is the all singing, all dancing, does everything that you need from a modern goalkeeper, who has that pressure then of coming into Manchester United and having to perform when it's a completely different kettle of fish for him from what he's been used to previously. Inter sold Andre Onana for 50 million quid or 47 million quid or whatever it was to Man United and replaced him with Jan Sommer, number 2 at Bayern Munich. 6 million euros. And now Inter could well be going to the Champions League semi-finals. Not every single player has to be 50 million quid or massive, massive money. Not every player has to be. There are plenty out there. I don't have names down, but there are plenty of goalkeepers out there who can offer just the basics of a safe pair of hands, instill confidence in the players around them, and doesn't cost too much. He can be 34, he can be 33, he can be 32, he can be 35, whatever. The most important thing here is just to have a dependable person between the sticks who just saves it. just saves it and makes sure that costly errors aren't given up over and over again. Ruben Amorim had, like, I think Antonio Adan, was it, in his goal at Sporting? I think, like, really experienced goalkeepers who are not the revolutionary players who can go and pass the ball 90 yards and dribble out of certain areas in their own net. And I don't think United need that in this team. I don't think they need that goalkeeper that Eric Ten Hag wanted. They don't need that in this team. They just need somebody functional who is just going to make sure that the job is done. Experienced head. And that example that I gave of how to do it properly. I think Inter got Onana on a free, sold him for 47 million quid or 50 million quid within a year or two, and then signed Jan Sommer, very experienced, very respectable goalkeeper who played in the Bundesliga for so long, installed him as number one, and now they're flying. You know, there's no reason why United can't do that as well. And if you're so concerned about money and it's so difficult to turn profits, that's potentially even an area that you can make up. You know, sign an experienced goalkeeper for next to nothing. I think people get in touch with me on social media. Alex Merritt from Napoli. I'm not advocating for this, but there are players at other teams goalkeepers at other teams who can come in and potentially don't have to cost all that much money. They don't need to be the massive profiles of runs all day because you're a goalkeeper at the end of the day, right? So I think United really need to look at this, and I think the importance of it is just absolutely massive. And before I go as well, I do need to talk about the attack because I started talking about Højlund a few minutes ago. I was very much in the camp of give Højlund a chance when Amorim came in, and I do still think there's a player in there, but Fabrizio Romano yesterday was saying that he's very much on the agenda for Juventus because they're not sure if they're going to keep Kolo Muani. We know that United have been looking at Liam Delap, Victor Osimhen, these kinds of players, and we know that a striker's on the agenda because United aren't scoring enough goals. And yeah, I think you don't want to go into Højlund's 21, 22, and I've said this many times. The situation that Højlund was brought into in the first place is not ideal for a player of his age to have that responsibility thrust upon him and expect him to perform and deliver goal after goal for Manchester United, especially in this situation. But at the same time, the first touches, there was a shot which he kind of scuffed, which went wide. There was a ball which he collected and then passed out for a throw-in. United just don't have any bite in attack at all. Joshua Zirkzee comes on and instantly makes a difference. And I think I'm seeing a lot of people say Zirkzee needs to start all the time. And I'm in that camp now as well. But I think Amorim looks at the profiles of players that he's got and chooses differently between each game. If he feels like he needs more pace in behind, I'm sure that he looks at Højlund and thinks, obviously, you can offer that compared to what Zirkzee can. Zirkzee offers that option to hold up and bring other players into the game. Look, I don't think there's any doubt Zirkzee needs to be in that position to start games from here. And look, Højlund, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he ends up being sold in the summer. It would not surprise me. Dependent on how much money United can get for him, because they paid so much, and amortized costs means that I think they need to get about 40 million quid back for him. Whether they do, I don't know. But there is definitely still potential in there. I just don't think that United have the time to work with Højlund at the moment. And Garnacho as well. I think I don't want to get on players' backs here, but there was a big conversation in January about United can't do this. United can't sell their soul. We don't want to see United selling their academy players. Garnacho has a hell of a lot of potential, and he does. but this system is not the right fit for him. It's just not for me. So many attacks are come to nothing because he loses the ball. And yeah, it's just generally concerning. I think, look, for now, in terms of the options that they've got with Ahmad out as well, I think Garnacho is probably the best option to have to start matches a lot of the time, or to have to stretch defenses, because he does do that really well. But I just don't think the system fit is right for him. I think he's better off in a wide role, carrying the ball and going side to side. But obviously, this role requires him to be more narrow, and I think it just doesn't work for him. So United are going into a summer, like I say on every show, that they need to absolutely get right. And don't be surprised if there are big calls made on players, because United need a facelift. This team needs urgent care, urgent change, and I think we'll end up getting it, but it could mean that some unpopular decisions are made along the way. But look, United have drawn with Lyon, and I should be saying that. Fingers crossed. Look, United are favourites for this game. Don't get me wrong. They are. Let's hope they do progress. I think they should progress, but at the same time, you just don't know with the volume of errors that are coming out. You're just not sure at the moment, and some urgent care is needed to be taken in the summer. But obviously, United have a job to do before then. There's a few weeks left, 6 weeks ish left of the season, and a lot could happen in that time. The Europa League is the priority here. They need to get this right. Final is on the 21st of May. But let's see what they can do in the next game next week. Let's see what happens against Newcastle in the Premier League on Sunday as well. It'll be a difficult game, that one. But anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, everyone. Get in touch with me in the comment section on YouTube if you've not done so already. Let me know what you think. And subscribe to the podcast as well on Apple and Spotify. And follow me on social media at @_Scott Saunders on X, Instagram, and TikTok. See you soon.